This next method of drawing from observation is going to be using a grid to help you break down a large image into smaller pieces. So the first thing you'll notice about the grid is there's letters going across the top and numbers going down the side. That's so you can zoom in and focus just one box at a time. I like to tell my students to make observations about what rows and what columns the drawing is located in. So if you notice, D1 has no part of the drawing in it. So when you draw your bulldog down below, you know that no part of the drawing should be in D1. But if you notice that the lip right here and the chin, that's all located in row D. If you look at the ears, both of the ears should be located in row 1 across the top. The eyes are in row 2. Really, both eyes are located in C2, so when you draw this section, you know you need both eyes. I would also count features like the spikes. There are 5 spikes that you need to draw on the collar, and I would look at where the spikes are located. Do the spikes cross over the grid line? Are part of the spikes in one letter and another letter, or is the entire spike just in one letter? So I would make observations before you begin so you're familiar with what the drawing looks like. And then when you start to do the drawing, you want to pay attention to the contour line and where the contour line crosses the grid. So for example, if I draw a guideline right here, I could look at this distance from the grid to the line, that's my negative space, and I could recreate a similar guide down below. I also like to look at where the line crosses on the grid. So for example, the ear, I could look at this space, I could look at this space. So my ear might start somewhere around here. So I like to tell students to pick the best method that's going to work for you. Do you want to start with the easiest boxes first? So in my opinion, easy box might be A4 because all you're drawing is this curved line. Or possibly D4, you've got 2 curved lines here. So sometimes I tell students pick the easy ones and get them out of the way and then work towards the harder ones. Other times I get students who like to draw the way you read, from left to right and top to bottom. Or I'll get students who want to do all one row and then move down to the second row. It doesn't matter. Sometimes I get students who want to draw the outside edge around the whole image and then they go in and fill in the details. So you just have to figure out which process works best for you. The whole goal of grid drawing is to draw accurately by recreating similar contour lines and negative space. So I already kind of sketched out the beginning of this one. So I see that the line is kind of curving down at an angle in C1. And I have this little bit of detail of ear. I'm going to look at this negative space right here, that shape, and I'm going to try and draw a similar line down below. Just a tiny portion of the eyebrow comes around. And now I'm looking at this distance, this negative space. When I start to draw in that part of the line, I see there's a gap between these 2 lines that kind of make the letter V. Now this is going to come down into my cheek, and just the top of this tooth is in box D2. So now I'm going to get my lips sketched in. I'm looking at this negative space, and I'm looking at this shape or space down in there. And this curves down into D4. I'm looking at this tiny piece of negative space there where my second line is located. And then this line curves up and around. And if you notice, the line is thick. We've got thickness to our line. So you could draw a double line like what I just did, where the outside edge and the inside edge, or you could just go back and thicken the edges as you go. Either is fine with me. So now I'm drawing this curve that goes all the way into C3 and then down a tiny bit into B3. I'm looking at this tiny piece of negative space here, so I got to scoot that over some. This curvature goes all the way through the diagonal corner here. So I'm going to connect that. There's just a tiny piece in A3, so I'm going to draw that a little bit. I'm looking at this triangle shape right there in B3. I've got an eyebrow that is located here. And then the top edge of this kind of connects into that. I'm going to draw how thick this line is. This line has to come up into B2. So then if I'm confident that my line is going to stay there, I could start to do the shading to thicken the line. Then I've got this little piece. Where these all connect down low. Now I'm getting into my spike. The tip of the spike is in C4. I have a tip of a spike in B4. Another spike tip in A3, and it crosses over A2 and A3. The corner of my ear goes this diagonal line here, comes up into A1, and then this is going to connect over there. So you can see how I'm just following the grid. I'm looking at the contours, I'm looking at where the contours cross the grid, how the contours connect, I'm looking at the negative space. Okay, so that's a majority of the outline of this bulldog. Now I need to work on my eyeball. Okay, now that I have a majority of my contour line in place, I'm just going to go back in and I'm going to start to shade in my dark values. To finish up this drawing.